Good morning. It's great to be back at NCAUG. I've been to this conference since 1998. I'm a lot older than I look, but I was on the board for a long time. Anyway, I'm Kent Rothrock. I'm the Director of Managed Services with Aineon, and I'm going to talk a little bit about ArcGIS enterprise success stories that we've seen. I used to be Highland Mapping, for those of you that don't know me, up until 2022, and when we were acquired by Aineon, which has been fantastic for us. We work in a much smaller world. I mean, we're Esri Gold business partners, and I've worked closely with Esri, particularly the Charlotte office, for many, many years. But we're in the trenches doing a lot smaller implementations usually, although we do work with some big counties and government agencies as well. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'm going to talk about three particular clients at the end and just some things they're doing. It's nothing really groundbreaking, but I think we're just trying to make the case for folks to go ahead and make the jump to enterprise. You know, I work with a lot of clients who are still very hesitant, particularly to move to ArcGIS Pro, but we're getting them there slowly but surely. I'm trying to tell them, don't wait until 2026. We need to sort of get on the program before then. But we also are seeing folks make that trajectory to ArcGIS Enterprise, where maybe they've been with server for a while, maybe they're using ArcGIS Online, but they're slowly making that migration to enterprise. I'm going to talk a little bit about the EA. I know that's a big initiative for Esri, and it's great when you're a consultant and people have EAs. It's really cool because software is not an issue, and you constantly run into that, particularly with smaller shops. I'm going to briefly talk about licensing, and like I said, I'll talk about a few client examples. So again, I'm now part of Aineon, global company, you know, GIS services, et cetera, et cetera. We did also just get the parcel specialty. We did the interviews and did everything we had to do for that last couple of weeks. So that's an exciting event for us. We do a lot of land records work, implementing the parcel fabric. So ArcGIS Enterprise, again, Joe's an expert. He just talked a lot about it. I'm going to try not to rehash too much. I will say a couple of things I was thinking when I was watching him. One key one was the disaster recovery planning. Having been a consultant for over 25 years, I've gotten to do that stuff for real. And, you know, I've seen systems go down and have panicked clients calling me, and man, it's like, where's the backup? And if they don't have a backup, it's bad news. And I've seen that before. I've seen clients that were like, our backups are a couple months old. And I'm like, it's not good. It's not a really good situation. So it is one of those things that you never seem to have the time to do. And it's funny when it's happened and I've had to restore somebody's database or system from a backup, I'm like, well, at least you can tell your bosses that your disaster recovery works, but that is not the way you want to find out. So as he indicated, if there's any way you can mimic a disaster and try to go through the steps as much as you can and see if it works or if you got a hole in it, because it gets real when that stuff goes down. Again, and another thing was the scaling. You know, when you start to implement ArcGIS Enterprise, you know, single machine deployments are only for the smallest clients. If you've got any sort of user base, you're going to have a lot of content. The reality is you're going to need multiple servers. You just are. You do not want to put portal, server, SQL on the same box. Bad idea. So do your homework on that. Work with a consultant, work with Esri, work with a business partner, and do your due diligence to make sure you've got the right environment. Because again, once you get everything deployed and then it's really slow and doesn't work very well, you know, that's not a good situation. A lot of times it's hard to change midstream. So enterprise, again, without getting into the minutia, it's a comprehensive GIS content management system. Again, it's sort of a paradigm shift from the days gone by of just disparate databases and client systems, and then, ArcGIS server. Again, I'm old enough to remember ArcIMS and ArcInfo Workstation and all that. I talked in a workshop I did yesterday about that whole transition from the 90s to where we are now. And it's really fun and interesting to look back. But again, a couple of highlights. Enterprise, has a lot of built-in security features, robust data and content management, all sorts of mapping and visualization capabilities, and more than anything, just a great platform for sharing and managing your data across a big enterprise. Again, Joe talked a little bit about the components of the base deployment. ArcGIS servers, basically like ArcGIS server was before ArcGIS Enterprise. It just hosts all the long-running services. Data store, he talked about its role. There's a lot of cool things you can do with data store. Data store really comes in handy for doing disconnected editing, managing that sort of thing. Portal, of course, being the front end, and then the multiple web adapters in the base deployment. You got two, one for server and one for portal. Licensing can be a little bit confusing. We won't even go into desktop licensing. But with the ArcGIS Enterprise, if you've not done it, there's really two tiers of licensing. You've still got a licensed ArcGIS server, and then you also have a license for portal that's a JSON file. It's just a internet format that defines the server roles, user types, the member roles, and the user type extensions. So that's something you've got to understand. So when you're installing and configuring your enterprise, there's a point where you have to enter those licenses. And when you do upgrades, you need to have all that stuff in hand, et cetera, et cetera. So the enterprise agreement, again, I know this is a big initiative with Esri for good reason, but it's something you definitely need to consider. Talk to your Esri representatives. There's lots of flavors of EAs now. There's big blanket ones for your organization based on population. There's departmental ones. There's online. There's a lot of options. But the bottom line is you get access to a massive amount of software on the fly. And again, this first line is avoid the time-consuming process of justifying purchases. Well, once you get enterprise, the potential for standing up applications for field crews and things like that you've never had before is really easy, but you need licensing because you need to be able to add users. You need to be able to add field worker accounts, data editor accounts. If you've got an EA, you've got what you need. If you don't, you're generally having to wait. Well, we got a budget and that's going to be next July. So again, the EA sort of can free you up to stand things up without having to wait for the procurement process. Again, the ability to deploy almost unlimited quantities of Esri products. It gives you a lot of flexibility. It reduces admin costs because you're not having to go through all that budgeting stuff every year. And again, it's a fixed fee normally for 3 years, and just allows for a platform for expansion. So again, we're big as consultants and Esri business partners. We're big fans of the EA. It makes our lives easier too when we're helping you with projects. So I was just going to talk again about 3 examples. These are all small clients, but just how they're using ArcGIS Enterprise and, to successfully keep moving forward with their GIS. So Alamance County in Central North Carolina, longtime client of Highland Mapping and now of Aineon, and their biggest city is Burlington, North Carolina. So they came to us with an issue that a lot of cities and counties have, where the county and the city both maintain addressing information. And they needed a way to simplify that and streamline it. And ArcGIS Enterprise and branch version databases provide that way. And so what we did is Alamance County, they worked together they have ArcGIS Enterprise we implemented a few years ago, and they host all the addressing data and the centerline data. And utilizing ArcGIS Enterprise, Burlington, by virtue of having an account in Alamance County's Enterprise, can log in using a feature service securely and essentially edit the exact same data at the same time. So I know it seems simplistic, but almost everybody still has to copy and paste and give each other copies of address points. And you're always behind. You're never getting current data. Well, now in Alamance County and Burlington, they always have the latest address points and center lines available because they're basically editing the same data in the same system. And it's secure, it's fast. You can edit feature services directly in ArcGIS Pro, and it's been a real game changer for those guys. And again, it's something that we're encouraging a lot of our clients to do because we go from county to county, we see the same thing. So again, they have their own edit versions. At ArcGIS Enterprise, as I understand it right now, you can only go one tier below the default version with your versioning. So you don't have the real complicated version trees, which frankly is better anyway. I think people tend to get a little carried away with their version workflows sometimes, and they never seem to get a full compress. So this sort of enforces a little bit more simplicity. Just a vanilla shot of ArcGIS Pro, although you'll notice that toolbar is a custom add-in that we built and that we provide to clients that simplifies and streamlines the management and editing of addressing data. So we built a toolbar that basically we sell to a lot of clients that streamlines it for next-gen 911. So we get clients to go ahead and move their data model to the NINA schema. They use our tools, which again just streamlines the process, and then making the uploads to GeoCom here in North Carolina is a lot simpler and easier. And again, both Burlington and Alamance County are using the same tools, although they don't have to. They just have to edit through Pro. Again, to highlight our add-in, that we have a settings form where you can set all the overlays and you can do a lot of the configuration, and we use several standalone tables that sort of drive that application. Ashe County is another example. So Ashe County is a small county up in the mountains where I live. And the cool thing about Ashe County, they were our first client to get off of desktop. So they were the first client that I know that does not use ArcMap, ArcCatalog at all anymore as of 2022. So we're very proud of that because, like I said, it's been a real challenge. So this is, again, in my workshop yesterday, I showed about 10 different server configurations. They've got really a sort of simple implementation here. They had ArcGIS Server before, and once we implemented Enterprise, we federated that server. And so now they have their full-blown Enterprise. And like Joe said, SQL's not really part of it, but in most of our clients that we work with, their enterprise geodatabases live on SQL. So I always just throw it in the diagram. But they had the ArcMap parcel fabric ahead of time. We had implemented that about 2015, and they were using our addressing solution. And so the last step was land records. And again, in North Carolina, I work with a lot of tax offices, a lot of mappers, be at the Mapper Conference here in 3 weeks. And that seems to be the last workflow to go in the county governments in North Carolina. Everything else seems to be easy to get to Pro. And then the land records is the hardest one. It's very complicated workflows. They all use annotation in North Carolina. So trying to get folks to Pro there has been a real challenge, but we're doing it, and we've got a lot of projects in motion now. Well, with Ashe County, we just needed to upgrade them to the ArcGIS Pro Fabric. And for those of you that have looked or maybe in your organization thought about the parcel fabric, I think the ArcGIS Pro Fabric's a big step up from the ArcMap Fabric. I think the ArcMap Fabric had some issues. It works. We've got it going in some pretty big counties, but the Pro Fabric is a distinct improvement. So definitely look for that in the future. But anyway, so Ashe County, nothing real exciting other than the fact that they moved everything to Enterprise and to Pro. So they're using the Pro Fabric, they're using our dressing tools, everything's being done through feature services. They still have a use for ArcGIS Online. One thing I tell people is ArcGIS Online is nice. You got to, you know, it's not either or with Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. One great example is disasters. So, you know, I think back to Hurricane Florence a few years ago. I think that was the one where I know Pender County went half underwater. And, you know, ArcGIS Online is still working even when all the servers go down. When you have no power in your county and you have no servers at the courthouse, and you could still leverage ArcGIS Online to do swift boat rescues and damage assessments and all that stuff that needs to be going on in the midst of a disaster. Again, this last shot here is just our web template that we provide as well. Just sort of, you know, they edit the Pro Fabric. We have automated jobs that pull the data out of the Pro Fabric. We get the current parcels, marry it with tax data, and then we have our own JavaScript application that the client uses for their public facing web app, their everything but the kitchen sink web app. And again, we talked a little bit about user type extensions. So they have the Parcel Fabric user type extension. A lot of that licensing stuff, there's multiple tiers, it's a lot to get through, but it'll make sense when you get there implementing it. Again, just some vanilla shots from Portal, no big deal. I'll just breeze through these. One thing about the Pro Fabric, if you know anything about the Parcel Fabric, the ArcMap Fabric did not have topology built in, which is a problem if you manage parcels. The Pro Fabric does. That's one of the biggest and best improvements, is now you can manage your topology while they're mapping parcels. The history tracking, that's what's in the red hatch there, has gotten even better. I think that's a little better managed in the Pro Fabric, and so forth. So the last example I wanted to talk about is Town of Boone. Again, no real rocket science here, but they're using Enterprise to do some pretty cool stuff. They're using a Survey 123 app to map all their smart water meters. So a lot of places these days, and I'm no utility expert by any means, but I know a lot of folks are implementing smart meters that basically can be read wirelessly from afar. Boone is no exception. So they've utilized Survey 123 as they've been installing and mapping their meters. So they basically go, they collect a point with their mobile device, they enter a few attributes, including the physical address manually, and then they use a barcode to scan and get the fairly complex, unique IDs, all as with Enterprise as the back end of all that data and the Survey 123 application. And then nightly, they export that data out, and then it feeds their billing system so that there's a, you know, absolute integration there between the field data collection and the billing system. Very important stuff. So again, just a few screenshots of the survey forms. And again, the final data, I know that's almost impossible to see on the screen, but it's become a real valuable use case for them. And they also then put that data in dashboards and, you know, can utilize it in any number of ways. But Enterprise was really key to getting that going for Chris at the Town of Boone. So that was all I had. Anybody got any questions for me? I think we're way ahead of schedule this morning. You guys are going to get a half hour of your life back. Yes, sir, Chase. Well, so the question was about a client having Ashe County having the Enterprise geodatabase and the data store. So the data store is required when you do a base implementation. You have no choice but to install it. So they're not even, they have a cemetery mapping application there that they use as a hosted layer. So that lives, it's a great question. That lives in their data store. And so they go out and field collect and everything's it's just that black box, as we like to say. It's like it's a Postgres database actually. And the data, it's unmanaged, and they just collect with their field maps, and it's all stored there. They utilize it, make dashboards, make maps from the data store. Then all their other data, like their parcel data, is all coming by reference from the SQL database. And that's a very typical situation. But yeah, when you implement ArcGIS Enterprise, you have no choice. You're implementing the data store, the base data store. Anything else? All righty, thank you.